It's Thursday, May 28th, and we have three fantastic presentations lined up here for you all. So thank you for joining us. And before I go ahead and tell you about our presenters, is there anyone who wants to share any news with the group?
Yes, Roland, thanks. This is Scott McLeod, World University and School. I'd like to share that due to a letter to the MIT President Raphael Reif, World University and School will start listing MIT OpenCourseWare into MITx on the edX platform links. So we'll offer MITx courses for free to students' bachelor's degrees this autumn. Following that, law schools in many languages will happen. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you, Scott. Anyone else? Let me see. It's Lance. All right, Lance has been invited by the World Economic Forum to serve on the AI and Law Committee. So that's fantastic, and we're curious to learn more about that, and would love for you to perhaps share some of that experience with this group at another date or through our blog. That'd be fantastic. All right, so cool. So with that, it's a beautiful and hot day in Palo Alto. And I hope you're all doing well and staying healthy and safe. I will introduce our speakers now. We have three presentations lined up. So we have Sachin Malhan and Supriya Sankaran, who are the co-founders of Agami. Tell us about the Agami Prize and Agami Summit in India. Then we have Julie Saltman, the CEO and co-founder of Clause Logic, speak to us and tell us about her company. And then we have Emil Stefanuti, the COO of Contract Room, and Siva Ulapotla, the CTO, tell us about Contract Room. So let me turn it over to Sachin and Supriya first. Are you guys there?
Hi, Roland. I'm here.
Hey, there you are. Great to have you. Good to see you again. And yes. And yeah, so to all the speakers, so we have about an hour. So if you could keep your presentation as well as Q&A to about 20 minutes or so, that would be fantastic. And yeah, be sure to leave enough time for questions because our group generally tends to have questions. So
fantastic.
Okay, over to you, Sachin. Good to see you.
Good to see you again.
All right.
I'll just share my screen. Just give me a second. Great. Quick check. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, great. So thank you all. It's good to present at CodeX again. We presented at CodeX when we were getting started 2 years back, and last year my co-founder Supriya presented. It's always a strange relationship because we are presenting at 2 a.m. in the morning. So the nature of the relationship is in doubt. It's right in the middle of the night, but it's always something to look forward to for us. So, you know, I thought a good title for our presentation is how do you solve a problem like India? And, you know, India is a strange country in that sense. I mean, you have, if you look at it from law and justice, you have 1.3 billion people. 1 billion of these people come under the ambit of legal aid in India. 40 million pending cases, 1,445 days to resolve a case, more than nearly 4 years. 22 major languages and 121 minor languages, and not counting dialects. 63 out of 119 ease of doing business, and a shocking 163 out of 119 enforcement of contracts, which means that we're doing really well on some other things because we're not doing very good on enforcing contracts. At the same time, you know, that's why you call it, you know, land of contradictions, because despite that, you know, we have incredible latent leadership, and of course, some of it actual present leadership. We have the CEOs of so many of these top companies. We have an incredibly young, dynamic population. We have tremendous grassroots innovation. If you look at the Ashoka network of social innovators, India has the largest country pool of innovators. Many of them have received much recognition. We have solid information technology leadership, and we have a new generation of powerful law schools that have been steadily, making inroads into the justice space in India. So I would say, you have all these really complex challenges, but you also have tremendous possibilities. So how do you look at, a law and justice system that has so many issues? And I think when we started Agami, and Agami is an interesting organization because it's hard to put a finger on it. Is it an investor? Is it an accelerator? Is it a, is it a policy think tank? What is it? And really our vision behind Agami was, can we dramatically increase the amount of innovation, the quantity and the quality of innovation in law and justice in India? Can we do that? And we felt that the way to do that, and because the people who founded it came from the sector, at the same time they had a healthy distance being entrepreneurs, that they could look back at the sector and see its challenges. And we felt the way to do that would be to, one, change the story. The story was one of entrenched systems and stakeholders, lawyers, judges. This is the way things are done, a lot of colonial hangover. So how do you change the story away from that story that it can't be done if the state isn't convinced about it? How do you bust the silos so that, you have conversations happening across technology, design, business in a way that hasn't happened historically? How do you unleash the digital revolution, which is pretty obvious? It's upon us. You don't even have to unleash it, but at some level, how do you harness it? How do you create irresistible demand so that people are actually drawn to the system? They want to work with the system. They don't see it as immovable or unshakable or opaque. And how do you steward a movement? And these are things we looked at seriously. And this is what drove us to figure out where our interventions would be if we had to, over a decade, dramatically increase the quantum of innovation in law and justice in India. So this is what we say we do, which is we inspire and enable ideas that solve the biggest challenges in law and justice. And very often it gets a lot of like lifted eyebrow, or like people are confused. What do you do? And this is because, like I said, we don't fit that box very easily, of being an investor. We do pretty much everything that needs to be done to make, to inspire and enable ideas. Sometimes that's investing. Sometimes that's accelerating. Sometimes it's linking supply and demand. Other times it's policy work. But a lot of our work comes down to a process, the process of these 4 steps: discovering innovation, amplifying innovation, catalyzing innovation, and convening the ones who we think can really make market, society, basically the bright spots across on the entrepreneurial ecosystem, business, government, the judiciary. Some of the things we've been focusing on more recently, because I thought that would be useful, would be online dispute resolution, digital courts, and an open data culture. We think that these are some of the foundational interventions that we could make, which could dramatically alter the landscape of law and justice in India. And these are vertical. So if you look at it, these are specific themes that we've taken. But we also recognize fairly early on that if we wanted to shift the culture, it couldn't just be focused on specific areas only. It had to be more than that. So we also have horizontals. We also look at how we can change the story. We run India's foremost prize for innovators in law and justice. It's called the Agami Prize. It's supported by very well-respected organizations in India. And that is for us changing the story, because that says, look what's happening. People are already doing this. So you don't have to say that innovation in law and justice is a new thing. It's already happening. We've been working a lot on building the community, cross-sectoral, across design, technology, data, social sciences, just to make sure that people can see themselves as a part of a movement. And the other is we've been amplifying the leadership. Once we do find promising entrepreneurs, whether they're inside the private sector or business or government, how do we get them to be their biggest selves? So there are a lot of horizontals that we focus on, but today I don't want to dwell too much on the horizontals, even though I feel I'm leaving a piece of my heart on the table when I do that. I want to talk a little bit about our verticals, which I think will be of interest here. So I'll talk about the first vertical, which I'd mentioned, ODR, online dispute resolution. And the mission there is, how do we resolve 1 million disputes outside courts by 2022? The starting point is, of course, that India has very little or no ODR. At least a year and a half back when we started, that was the situation. So what we did was we tied up with India's #1 bank about a year and a half back. and we launched India's first national challenge for ODR. It was essentially the bank saying, can we see promising ODR solutions? And if we see promising startups, we commit to giving 10,000 of our disputes, which were primarily financial disputes, to these startups. And that challenge, which ultimately drew all the leading players in that space, the leading law firms, Google, IBM, many others, ultimately collaborated on that, led to 60 teams participating from India and abroad. There were lasting coalitions formed, and most importantly, an alignment around ODR. The result was that today we have a startup ecosystem that has 16, these were the three winners, by the way, SAMA, RDO, which is Resolve Disputes Online, and Center for Online Dispute Resolution. But we have now 16 startups that are working on ODR. Some of them are looking at it from facilitating automated negotiation. Some of them are looking at it as mediation. Some of them offer integrated services. Some of them are sector specific. But we have a big ecosystem, and we have around 20 enterprises that are piloting ODR for different types of disputes: unsecured loans, credit disputes, e-commerce disputes. So a year and a half, we've seen this sort of ecosystem build up. In order to support that ecosystem, we established this community, Autonomy, which is both on WhatsApp and Net and Telegram, but it also meets every quarter. We had a full virtual meeting as a result of COVID, which we called ODR Week, which happened very recently. The idea was to always base the leadership in the community of entrepreneurs and business leaders and government leaders, and make sure that this outlasts our intervention. So we're not seen as holding it together, but just catalyzing, making the linkages happen. This is a little glimpse of the ecosystem. Some of you might be familiar with some of these names, but this is a coalition of people that has gradually built up, that holds, that is kind of making sure that we don't drop the ball on ODR, and we really see it through the finish line. In fact, there's a big moment coming up in the next few weeks as India's premier planning body convenes the senior most Supreme Court judges, leading business owners, secretaries of government, to really bless ODR and make sure that some of the confusions around enforcement of online settlements and awards are taken away, and there is a conscious move towards it, especially because of the fact that most of the courts are operating only at about 10% because of COVID. So this is an example of the kind of work we've been doing. You can't put it in a box. You can't say it's investing. We've invested, we've catalyzed, we're really trying to be as opportunistic as possible and connect the dots to move the field forward. We're looking at ourselves as field builders, as field stewards. I'll just take a few more minutes to tell you a little bit about a couple of other verticals. Digital courts. In digital courts, the mission is to create transformative court experiences, not just automate the courts. And I'm sure many of you are familiar. There was a recent talk by Richard Susskind also. And one of the questions was actually asked, one of the designated responders was Justice Chandrachud, a Supreme Court judge who's the head of the e-courts committee. And he actually asked a question about the digital divide. So I want to mention that because there's an interesting linkage there if you were listening in. So he's already incredibly dynamic, and as the head of the e-courts committee responsible for transforming the courts, wants to do a lot. And our approach there has been quite different, because in the case of ODR, it was a lot of market making, building the startup ecosystem. In the case of digital courts, with so much being in the hands of the courts, you can't, that's not the approach. So the approach we took was really building a coalition that could demonstrate to the courts that we were excellent partners for them to take along in this journey. So we submitted a roadmap very, very recently, and the roadmap has led to us now, us and other members of this coalition. So if you look at the names there, you'll see other members of the coalition, but has led for the first time to us and two other members of the coalition, private organizations, being included on the e-courts committee, which is the committee that will define the future of the courts, as well as the AI committee for the courts. So that's the approach we've taken there, very much strategic demonstration of value, and then finding a pathway to be a source of influence that connects different parts of the ecosystem to the court, so that they're getting inputs from everyone, as opposed to the classic sort of insular approach. Full credit to the courts for being ready to embrace that and really running with it. Finally, I mentioned our work on open data culture and really open up to questions. And we really think it's at the core of everything, right? And there's no prizes for guessing that. But that's an area where we're really spending a lot of time. And again, a different approach. If you look at India today, you see a variety of different people working on the data side. You'll see it on the academic side, you'll see startups. So this is a little mind map of a lot of different organizations using data. But data is hard to get because the courts don't have a completely open data approach. Most of the data is behind captchas, and definitely large scale usage is not encouraged. So we have to work both with the courts to open that up, but also to build a community that can share data. And next week, in fact, the alpha version of the Open Legal Data Commons is being launched in India. It's called the Justice Hub, and that will open up the data. And in fact, tomorrow, which is going to be really hard for me to get up and make that meeting, tomorrow is going to be a meeting of a lot of key players to say, how do we accelerate NLP and AI and ML using that data, and how do we build a community? It's going to be long-term work, but it's an example of very different work. So just three variations, right? One was the startup ecosystem, supply and demand, building market linkages for ODR, and then of course getting the blessings from the government and judiciary. The second was just strategic advocacy and just demonstrating multidisciplinary capability. And the third is really building this community and building an open data movement. Just a little glimpse of what we're doing. I want to end by saying that we're very much about community, and if you come to India, we host a really amazing event at the end of every year, which brings together the entire community, which works on aspects of law and justice. So come and join that. It's called the Agami Summit. We also have two members of our community right here at Stanford. One is our Agami research fellow, Shalini. She's also on this call, so you can get in touch with her and find out more. She's at Stanford doing a PhD. And Riyanka is a CodeX fellow, and she's also been plugged into the community and great champion of what we do. So we're not that far, you know, and of course, everyone is equally close and far at the time of Corona, but we're not that far. So let me stop and open up for questions so that we get time to talk about it. Thank you.
Great, Sachin, thank you so much. Miriam is asking, she says, slightly ignorant question here. How is internet access in India? I'm wondering, as one of the verticals was ODR.
That's a really good question. I see, here's the thing, which is in India, you have fairly large scale mobile usage and smartphone usage. So you have a very large number of people who have access through 4G or at least 3G on their smartphones. So WhatsApp is huge. It's prevalent everywhere. But I will say that there is still a section of the population, the vast country, huge poverty. There is a section of the country that does not have that, a substantial section of the country that does not have access to that. So I think that when you look at ODR, we will have to consider ODR being India flavored. It will have to be sometime, for instance, I'll give you one of the best ways in which ODR is being used right now in India is on WhatsApp for migrant laborers to mediate unpaid dues with contractors. So there, what happens is there are organizations that intermediate that. So I think that we are going to see some hybrid solutions that are relevant for the Indian audience, but ultimately over 2 to 3 years, another 500 million are going to come online in India. That is the estimate, that is the latest research. So I would say that that number is going to change very, very fast.
Got it. Bruce is asking how your work can help address the rights of minority groups such as the Sikhs in India so that they can see justice function more effectively.
Yeah, you know, one of our areas of work, and I didn't touch that in these three verticals, but at the horizontal level, is broadly encouraging building the overall ecosystem. And one part of it is access to justice through legal services and representation. And so in our network, for instance, you have organizations that are using paralegal services or building grassroots lawyers within communities. So you're seeing new models of legal services, new models of representation. You're also seeing new ideas that are bringing underrepresented communities into law schools where they may not have been there in the right numbers, and that skew shows up all the way as they get into the profession of the judiciary, because you have a dominance of people who are coming from a privileged background. So I think that the only way to answer this in a really meaningful way is to make the whole system much more inclusive. And second, of course, is to find the models that allow for representation from inside those communities. And at a broader level in our ecosystem of entrepreneurs, there are many organizations. Jan Sahas is one organization that comes to mind. Nazdeek is another organization. I'm happy to connect you to those organizations if you want to learn more about how they bring some of these communities into the conversation.
Okay. So maybe last question, maybe two questions. So Scott is asking, how do you plan to navigate India's 22 official languages, and for hypothetically for real estate law relative to the main languages in India, and regarding all of your verticals?
You know, Scott, you ask this is a really killer question, right? How do you deal with that? I'll tell you, one of the first projects of the AI committee in India was a project to leverage AI for real-time translation. Currently, it works for 8 Indian languages. It's still in its early stages, but you know, the idea is to go beyond that. But I think this is a recurrent theme. Like if in India, if you want to scale and if you want to really reach people where they are, you have to solve the language problem. Because the truth is, we like to, you know, one of the old jokes about India is we like to all believe that we speak English, but actually a very small percentage of people speak English. But it's just that because it's a really big country, the small percentage is also pretty big. So I would say that this is a constant issue, but I've been super excited by the idea that the technology to translate on the fly languages and up to 8 Indian languages, that's phenomenal news, you know. So I'm happy to share that with you. It's called Project Anuvad, I think. I can share the information, though that data is online, but that's a sign of hope that hopefully this will percolate down to other services.
Okay, great. Sachin, we have to wrap it up here. I just wanted, as a clarifying question, so Agami is, are you a nonprofit, or are you like an accelerator or incubator? Well, how would you define yourself as?
We're a nonprofit. And how would we define ourselves? I think we define ourselves as a field steward, as a catalyst. So I think that's what we are. We have acceleration investment and all, but I don't think we could say we are an accelerator in the classic definition of things.
Okay, got it. Well, thank you so much. We let you go to bed. Really appreciate you staying up so long to join us.
My pleasure. I'll try to stay on for a bit longer. I want to hear some of the stuff, so I'll be on. Thank you.
Well, thank you for all the great work you're doing in India and for keeping us posted on that.
Thank you.
It seems like a lot of exciting things are happening there, and it's great to have that channel to you and get a bit of an insight on the landscape there. So thank you.
We are honored to be a part of this. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Well, let's turn it over.
Drop your email into the chat. That would be great.
If people want to reach out to you directly, Sachin.
Yes, I will drop my email into the chat. Hi, Colin. Good to see you here.
I also just saw Colin's face. There he is. All right. There he is. Great. Good to see you, Colin, too. Great. So next up is Julie. Julie, are you there? There you are. Okay.
Here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you well and clear.
Great.
And yeah, Julie from ClauseLogic. We're excited to learn about what you're up to.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Roland. Just sharing my screen here. Oops. There it goes. Okay, so I'm Julie Saltman. I'm one of the co-founders of ClauseLogic with technologists Mike Boucher and Dan Nix. We have built productivity tools for lawyers that enhance document drafting without changing lawyers' workflow. So the problem we sort of set out to solve is that there is a well-documented efficiency gap for lawyers, and that has 2 sort of major consequences. One is also, it's well documented. The first couple of statistics are from Clio's Legal Trends report showing that even though lawyers work really hard, we generally can only bill like 2.5 hours per day. We only get to collect 1.7 of those hours. And one statistic I found particularly interesting was that the lawyers who were revenue positive over the last 5 years were the ones who increased their caseload, or the number of clients that they served, by 20% in that time. So I think that's kind of an encouraging statistic. It means that people are getting more efficient, and I mean, hopefully it doesn't mean that they're just working 20% more. But my hope is that technology is enhancing that. And I also think that's encouraging because of the second consequence of the efficiency gap, which is that there's a serious access to justice problem in this country, and as Sachin so compellingly spoke about in other countries as well. And you know, this has been exacerbated, of course, by the COVID situation. So I'll get back to that in a second, but when we sort of set out to solve these problems, you know, we started at the baseline of these are problems I personally experienced because I'm a lawyer. I practiced for over a decade, and I spent most of my time. I had different types of jobs, practiced different types of law, but I spent personally most of my time in documents, mostly in Microsoft Word. And so there were a lot of things that I did in my practice that I felt, you know, should have been automated. But we didn't just sort of stop there. We expanded beyond my personal experience, and actually my team and I talked to over 70 lawyers about their workflow, the technology they use, the challenges they face, and we came up with a couple of working assumptions that we then built into our solution. So the first is that pretty much every lawyer, at least in the US, uses Microsoft Word. And a couple interesting things about Word. One is that although it's sort of changed its look over the years, and it certainly has improved, it has added features and certain features have gotten better, Word itself has not really changed, or there's not been innovation at the same rate as there have been in other sectors. Like one example is in my first job in 2006, I was given a BlackBerry, and of course now people practice on all sorts of different devices like Apple Watches, for example. And the rate of innovation and so many other types of software that lawyers use and so many other tool sets has just been really rapid, which is great. But it's interesting that word processors, which many of us use for a lot of the work that we do, haven't really expanded or changed at the same rate. And you know, that makes sense from Microsoft's perspective. They're building a general use word processor. So, you know, we're sort of thinking, or I, you know, my sort of idea at the beginning of this was, you know, like, why isn't there a way to create a mod for Microsoft Word that makes it Microsoft Word for lawyers? So when we thought about what would be in that kind of a platform, we looked at how lawyers use Microsoft Word. And that leads to our second assumption, which is that lawyers don't write documents, they compile them from previous work. And this is, of course, a huge efficiency promoting tool that you can do with pretty rudimentary word processing software. We copy and paste between documents all the time to create documents because we've already put the time into perfecting a previous version of the document. But then, you know, whenever you do that, there's still more work to be done. You know, I talked to one lawyer who told me that he thinks he spent $30,000 drafting an LLC operating agreement. That's just based on the amount of time it took him to sort of like cull all of his previous work and his combined work experiences and come up with what he felt like was just an excellent LLC operating agreement. So, and he feels like he's made that money back because now he has this to go off of for future clients. But even with future clients, he still has to, you know, he doesn't just sort of change the names. He still has to do a couple of types of changes. There are structural changes. So for example, the difference between a one-person LLC and a three-person LLC, you know, that necessitates some editing. You might need some different clauses in there because there are more than one people involved. And then there are also sort of more qualitative edits where you just sort of refine the language in certain clauses based on the industry of your clients or whatever, you know, unique fact they present because of their particular company. So we wanted to come up with a tool that that just layers on top of this customization, because this is really high value work, I think, from lawyers' perspective and also from the client's perspective. This is really where you feel like your lawyer is stepping up for you, is there for you, because they're creating this customized document that addresses all of your concerns. So we wanted to come up with a way to automate the things that aren't customization so that lawyers could spend their time doing that thinking and customizing where they're really adding value for their clients. So we created clause logic, and rather than just show you GIFs, I'm going to do a little demo for you. I just need to switch to Microsoft Word. Okay, so this is an independent contractor agreement, and you can see here is our clause logic pane. Now it looks like a normal agreement before, but I just clicked into the name column and you can see where the variables are in this document. The way that you add variables to a document, we have an automated tool that identifies variables, but you can also just drag and drop text, any text you want, into the pane and use a right-click menu to edit that. If you want to remove it, you just click this red X. And I show you that just to show you how fully integrated into Word we are, because when people see clause logic at first, they think, oh, so it's a template. But it's so much more than a template, I think, because it's not something that needs to be compiled. A lot of template software requires you to go to a website and upload your documents and build a questionnaire, or even build a questionnaire using software. And then when you need a document for a client, you have to go to the compiler, answer the questions, generate a document into Word. And then the problem is, if you make changes to that document, but then you need to go back out to the compiler and change some of your variable values, you lose all your work. And that's not the lawyer's workflow to answer a questionnaire and then not be able to make edits. So we wanted to give people the functionality of a template within Microsoft Word so they can sort of edit, make changes to information. And I'll show you how that works. You can see this company name appears several times right up at the beginning of this document. And if your client decides to rebrand, it changes automatically. Now, the other type of customization I talked about was copying and pasting. So I'm going to show you how that works with clause logic. I'm just going to go into variable view here so you can see in paragraph A, this company name is the only variable in this paragraph. And I'm going to go to a different Word window. Okay. Now you can see in this, this is a pretty similar looking document. There are different values here for the variables. I'm going to put us into variable name view, but you can see in paragraph A, there are 2 variables in this version. So to do a copy paste, you just do it like you always would. You copy this text, go back to your other document, and paste the text. And so you can see that the company name updated automatically. This blank line is here because this variable was not present in this document already. And so what clause logic does is it prevents you from bringing client-specific information from one case to the next by showing you a blank line if it doesn't have a value to replace. But let's say you decide you actually liked it better the other way. You can just do Control-Z like you would when you're drafting documents in Word, and it goes away. So what I've just shown you is our beta version. We just released this last month, and we have a small group of beta users using it. We're getting a lot of feedback. And we have a couple of plans to expand our feature set. The next one is coming out next week. And we actually built this based on feedback from a couple of our beta users who wanted the ability to generate multiple versions of a document with different sets of variables quickly. So essentially sort of like a mail merge, but with more functionality. And we decided to prioritize building that feature set because we think it's something that could be useful for lawyers helping people in the COVID crisis, because so many thousands, if not millions of people are suffering the same consequences of our current situation. There are so many legal aid clinics who are looking to sort of help people with the same type of problem over and over and over again. So I'll show you how this works really quickly, but I also would invite any of you, if you know of people, organizations who are helping people impacted by COVID who could use software like this, please let me know. We would love to give our software to them for free so that they can help even more people. So the way it works is, let's say you wanted to create 5 identical independent contractor agreements. You create an Excel workbook. I think I have to pull that up. So here we are in Excel. You can see the Just gonna make this look a little nicer. The variable names are across row 1 and the variable values are across row 2. Now, let's say you have your paralegal has helpfully created a spreadsheet with the information for the other individuals you need to create independent contractor agreements for. You can simply copy that from the spreadsheet. And then go back and paste it into the sheet you just opened. Now, I'm not putting in anything for company name, agreement date, because these variables are all going to be the same. It's the same company, the same governing law. And so you don't need to type that in every time. We understand that you only put values into the variables that you want to be different. And then I'm going to go back to Microsoft Word and select Generate Document Set. And this just takes a couple of seconds, but you'll see that the software is essentially generating identical versions of this document with the variable sets that we put into that Excel sheet. And I'm hoping that you are able to see the Windows Explorer window that will pop up. This is going. There it is. So I don't know, I hope this is apparent on the Zoom, but I'll just make sure. There. So you can see that the software generated 5 independent contractor agreements that are all identical with a different set of variables for each one. So I'm going to go back to my presentation and just put my contact information up. I'm going to stop here because I'd love to have a chance to take questions from everybody. And I also invite you, if you have any suggestions or feedback on my pitch or on the product, since we're such an early stage company, we're very open to hearing people's thoughts. So please don't be shy.
Great. Thank you, Julie. This is very cool. So, what's the business model? How is this? How are you gonna make money from the service? Is this a subscription based, or are people paying by using it for a certain amount of documents, or how does this work?
Yeah, it's a subscription-based service. We didn't think it made sense to have people pay by the document because these tools really just sort of integrate into the way you work. And it's not for any specific type of document. So, we have, there's one business paralegal who we've talked to who actually uses it to write his emails in Microsoft Outlook and also to compile these really complex business licensing documents. So we really want these tools to just be integral to your Microsoft Word experience and useful in any way that you find them. And so because of that, this is a just, license, it's a subscription model where the features that I've shown you today are what we call ClauseLogic Basic. We are adding a set of features to create a higher level service called ClauseLogic Professional, and that will allow you to do everything that you've seen today, but with groups or packages of documents so that you can type all your client's information in one place and sync it automatically with multiple documents or groups of documents. And then you could also create identical copies of those groups of documents using the document generator that I just showed you. So that'll be sort of the next level up. And then we also are looking at some enterprise solutions that will add even more complexity around automating parts of the searching, copying, and pasting of document compilation. But we're still gathering data on that one. That one's still in development. But yeah, so that's our model.
Great. So Miriam made a comment. She says, "Thank you for your talk." Also, Miriam wrote about the difficulty in achieving billable hours and how technology can help, and she shared a link to that, which you can all check out.
Thank you.
Clemens wrote, do you create your own contract templates or do you import your customers' templates? Are you selling just functionality features, or will you be selling content such as class templates, etc.?
We're just selling the tools because in talking to customers, most people told us that they weren't looking to buy pre-made documents. Like I said, we talked to this lawyer who created this $30,000 operating agreement. We want to give him the ability to get the most value out of that super valuable document that he spent a lot of time and energy creating. So yeah, we just give you the tools and we make it extremely easy to create or to add clause logic variables and other features and functionality into your document, all from within the one Microsoft Word window that you're working in.
All right, and then, okay, so Megan was asking, as you mentioned with templates, Microsoft Word can already be controlled through code. Can clause logic interact with the other existing templates and code-enabled functions?
So yeah, Microsoft has some limited functionality there. Clause logic does a whole lot more. And I think that we have tried to be unobtrusive in the way we've built these tools so that, like you saw, they work with Excel, they work with Microsoft Word. We are trying to sort of seamlessly integrate into the Microsoft ecosystem. So, it sort of depends on exactly which tools you're referring to, but there are a lot of tools that we integrate with very seamlessly. And there are others that we improve upon, and they're so much easier and more intuitive to use that, I think there's a reason that most lawyers don't know, at least the ones I've talked to don't know about these abilities, the things you can do with Microsoft Word. So rather than sort of teach people the complicated process for setting those things up, and I do think that for some of them it's pretty complicated, we've just come up with a better solution.
Great, Julie, thank you so much. I think if folks have additional questions, they can contact you directly. You put your email there already, so thank you for that. I have to turn it over to our next speaker, but thank you so much for sharing with us. And this is very, very interesting, and it makes a ton of sense to add this additional functionality that creates efficiency into the tool that lawyers use most, which is Microsoft Word. So that seems like a very good idea in itself. And Julie, thank you so much for joining us. And please keep us posted. And I will turn it over to Emil now, or Emil, if I pronounce this correctly. Emil, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. How are you? Yes, can you hear me okay?
Good. Great to have you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah. And you're just in San Francisco.
Yeah, I'm down the street in Palo Alto today. So we're right here.
I see. Great.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining us. Take it away.
Thank you. So my name is Emil Stefanuti. We're going to be talking about what we're doing at Contract Room and Smart Contract Analytics to experience the future of agreement. And there's two of us speaking today. There's me. I was one of the co-founders and CEO of Contract Room. And I have Shiva Kulabhotla with me today. We've recently joined forces between what we had already been doing at Contract Room and what Shiva's team has been working on from the AI perspective. So we'll be touching on those two things today. So from the very beginning, what we tried to do with Contract Room were three things, right? One is add speed into the process and be able to close agreements at least 10 times faster, right? So getting away from those ping pong matches of red line documents flying via email throughout the entire process of negotiation. Then adding control over the entire process and welcoming control freaks into the mix of our implementation. So we digitizing the process end to end and giving you kind of the visibility and the tools to control the process. and then adding deep insight, right? So what we call X-ray specs for contracts. So being able to have your contract process getting smarter as you go, and feeding insights back to you so that your following negotiations get always more optimal and smarter as you go. So the way we do this is we have an end-to-end optimization of the contracting process. So from the moment somebody, a requester may raise their hand and say, I need a contract for whatever use case, or anybody even creating agreements on their own if they're allowed to, and then how that request travels through the right hands at the right time for that processing. So it's almost like a conveyor belt, like the FedEx conveyor belt for your contract request and for that kind of processing. And then having the right contract manager take over, create a draft, and hopefully do that in a couple clicks with a very with an automated tool that does this kind of build up of documents based on different templates even. Then having all the collaboration with your internal team for negotiation with your stakeholders internally, and then having smart contracts and contract analytics through AI and NLP to make sure that you have intelligence over what is inside those contracts, and then having all workflows associated with approving and signing contracts. One of the special things with Contract Room is that the counterparties, whether vendors or clients or whatever other type of counterparty, they are also involved in the process inside Contract Room. So obviously it's a choice for them. The system is flexible enough to also let them in or have them participate without necessarily logging into the application, and they always do it for free. But it gives you the collaboration of all these people inside one single platform gives us a huge data advantage, right? So we now are able to capture 3 different types of data. One is your transactional data. This is kind of the the metadata from your contracts. What type of agreement was it? Who started it? Who signed it, and what were the key values? One of the important things that we've been focusing on is making sure that from the contract data perspective, we depart from the concept of you capturing data from the end result of the negotiation, which is what many CLM systems had done before. And this means essentially that you're capturing whatever ended up being in the contract you signed. And that's fine. It's just, it's similar to you watching the last 5 minutes of a movie, right? You know how it ends, but you don't know what happened before, right? And when we believe that there's a lot of value in getting the data from the entire process from the beginning to end. Then we have content data, and that's essentially words and what words are changing and what are they changing into throughout the negotiation process. And then behavioral data, this is arguably one of the most interesting things that we've been working on at Contract Room, is now capturing not just what we agreed on, but also how we agree on things, right? So not just who made what changes, but how long did it take? How often do we see these changes? Whenever we see these changes, how do we typically react? Do we say yes? Do we say no? And if we say no, how does my counterparty typically react? So what we're trying to get here is to a situation where your past contracts are kind of giving you contextual information about future contracts that you will be negotiating. So it's almost like predictive agreement, if you will. And all of this, of course, is feeding into a repository with deep content search, and with obviously all the insights and reporting associated with what your contracts are about, how long things are taking, every single kind of cycle time, not just in terms of how long the entire thing took, but now even knowing how long does our Mary in legal usually take to approve things, or how often does he say yes or no to these kinds of things. So that's kind of conceptually what we've been up to, and this is being well accepted. We have we've been working in different industries, in different functional areas, whether legal or procurement or sales or even HR, just making sure that their processes, their contracting process becomes not only more efficient, but happier. if you will, with a better experience overall. So let me show you a little bit of what that experience looks like in contract room. So right now I'm logged in as Lucy Law. So let's say somebody from our legal team. And here's my activity feed. And this is giving me real-time updates on everything that is happening with contracts that I'm somehow associated with, right? So whether I started it, I'm a negotiator, a signer, or approver, the system is kind of keeping me updated in real time on everything that is happening there. And everything that it recognizes as pending on me, it will move to my to-do list, and it will be all dynamic. So if I go into this contract, for instance, that Joe Buyer, made some changes to, I will see in here directly in this environment, I would see all the changes and all the document notes that have been made so far. So I'm not going and downloading Word documents up and down and emailing stuff and attaching stuff. The system is able to capture all these things in one place, and it will mark in red the things that are pending on me, yellow for things that are pending on someone else, and then green for things that we already agreed on, right? So in here you can see kind of what's happening right now, and it's always the most recent version of the agreement. I have tools such as Summary that will give me a real-time look at where we are in the process. So how long we've been working on this, who is on my team, who is the counterparty, and this is a dynamic kind of tracker, equivalent to kind of your Domino's pizza tracker, but it's just telling you where we are in the contract at any given point. So one of the cool things, like I mentioned before, that was really important for us is improving the way people collaborate in the process, right? Especially internally with your team members. So let me show you a couple of things right now. So one thing you'll see is I can see right here that Joe Buyer, my teammate, one of my colleagues, just joined this negotiation right now. And I will share actually my a different screen just for a second, so you can see side by side how these two people are collaborating right now. So you'll see on the left-hand side, Lucy, she's the from the legal team, and then on the right-hand side, you see Joe, right? So they're working on the same agreement at the same time. So now, for instance, he can go in and say, I don't agree with this, right? So he's gonna say, I'm not okay, and he's gonna suggest a change. While he's doing that, you'll notice that the system is automatically locking everyone else that is working on the agreement right now, just on that little piece. So you don't have people stepping on each other's toes as they work. And then the same thing will happen if I'm working on any other changes in the agreement. I can now say I agree or disagree with this. I can even bring in pre-cooked text alternatives or fallback provisions, if you will, where I can just, with a click, just replace the entire text and have it, inserted as a new change, right? So if I want to edit this, I can also, make any additional changes in here, and the system will kind of be keeping everybody in the loop as we go through the process. So it's a very efficient way to kind of see what's happening at any given point. One of the beauties of this is you get full history of every single change that has happened in this negotiation, regardless of how many versions of documents you've had. So imagine when to do it today, you probably have to go through a bunch of versions of the Word document and kind of compare them side by side. And here you have everything in just one place. You can compare every 2 points in time with each other, and that would make it easier for you. But remember, we're not just tracking the words and what changed here or there. We're also tracking how long did it take, what were the actions that were taken, and what were the reactions to those actions throughout the process, right? So that ultimately becomes easier for you. So now there's a lot more behind this. I'll be happy to, show you more if you want later. But I wanted to show you very quickly a couple things, right? I'll change screens very quickly just so you can see it more without too much noise on the screen. So we have 3 different ways in which people can start new contracts in Contract Room, right? One is for kind of simple agreements that are done in a high volume kind of basis, where, like, for instance, an NDA, people can just create an NDA right here and there very quickly, right? And then from here, when they fill out the entire contract, then they'll be able to send it right out to the counterparties directly from here, right? So I'm not gonna fill it out, but essentially when I click continue, if there are any other questions on the to fill this document out, they will appear, and then by clicking continue, I can ship it out to the counterparty directly without having to create a new email or anything more. You can also create new agreements by request. You can do it directly in the system, or going here to create a request. And this page, by the way, is fully configurable, so our customers get white labeling and they have their own branding here. And they can also request a new agreement directly from here, or they can request going through a third-party systems, let's say like Salesforce, and be able to directly from here create a new request. And those requests, you'll be able to see from other systems what's happening with all your contracts in contract room. And then, if you have your request created, you can have, your team, I'll show you here, just go through a queuing system where you can actually assign work and see who's working on what at any given point, right? So you have kind of the workflow tools, the collaboration tools, the intelligence tools to get control, speed, and insights as you go. So some of the insights that you're gonna be able to see are dashboards and reports and other things like that capture not just what the contract said, but also how it was agreed on, and who participated, how long things took, and what was the overall kind of behavior. So there's a lot more behind it, and I'll leave my email and information for you to reach out if you want to see more. But I wanted to give Shiva a chance to actually talk about the AI
Can you hear me?
piece of this. Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. We have 3 minutes left, and there's a bunch of questions, and we'd love to hear from Shiva too, but yeah, I would like for folks to be able to ask their questions too. So how do we handle that? Can I read you some of the questions? Can you answer them?
Sure.
And then return to Shiva? That'd
Yes.
be okay. All right. So Roger's asking, does contract room handle complex transactions in which there's up to 100 documents being concurrently drafted and negotiated by multiple law firms, investment bankers, and executives? Question number one. Miriam's asking, would your tool also be available for negotiated settlement agreements? After all, they're also a contract, and oftentimes a barrier to settlement is getting the right people in the room. And Ben's asking, how do you handle complex documents and formatting, cross-references, table of contents, style, footnote, and so on. And Clemens is asking, I'm curious how you captured the behavioral data. Is this automated, or do users have to input this type of information? And maybe Siva is the right person to answer some of those as the CTO. But yeah, the first one would be Roger, who's asking, how complex can the transactions be? And maybe that's, yeah, over to you.
Yeah, so we're dealing with relatively complex transactions. One thing to mention here is that we've designed this application for high volume contracting use cases. So we are seeing less usage on super complex negotiations that are related to kind of one-off documents. So the vast majority of the behavior or the traffic we see in our system is related to kind of more standard high volume contracts like that we see in mainly in corporations. So I would say right now, the vast majority of our clients are corporate legal, and then you're going to see a lot of MSAs, purchase agreements, SOWs, employment agreements, NDAs, and things like that. So although it can handle a lot of complexity, it wasn't designed to be doing these one-off kind of agreements. The goal for us is really taking care of that high volume situations where speed control and insights become critical. So I think maybe with that, I'm Roland. I'm answering a few of the questions, because a lot of others, whether it can handle very complex type of reference and things like that's not really our focus. We can do a lot of that, and I'll be happy to touch deeper on those things with more time. But our really core business is dealing with the high volume contracts. So we have customers that would do maybe 10, 20,000 new contracts per year that are kind of high speed things for commercial purposes that they want to get out. In terms of the behavior, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
No, and then the behavioral data, yeah.
Yeah, so in terms of the behavior, that the system is capturing all of that on its own. So there is nothing that the user has to be doing in order to record these things. The system is just tracking what the actions are and what the reactions are to those actions. Then it's a combination of timers and counters to just kind of keep the whole picture together at the end of the day.
Okay. And then maybe Siva can
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Roland. I just want to, I think Emil covered pretty much everything. Just want to tell you a little bit on the cool features that we are working on, more on the AI capabilities and stuff like that that gets integrated into the platform. More at a clause level scoring if you are accepting a third-party paper, a standard clause versus non-standard. We produce a score to basically compare. That's one of the things. And also any third-party paper, if you're accepting the risks and obligations related to that, we primarily build a table of contents out of a unstructured document that can be later on imported back into the contract room, primarily to analyze the clauses and stuff like that. Also, some of the search capabilities that we bring to the table, pretty robust search capabilities, primarily based on semantic search, similarity, and quite a few others. And everything underneath is all completely NLP and quite a bit of document parsing, a lot of stuff. Unfortunately, I don't think we have time to show those kind of things, but hopefully sometime in future I should be able to demonstrate some of those.
That would be great, Siva. Thank you so much for that overview on some of the technology you're using. That's very interesting. It's very cool. I mean, I think I've been just recently again privy to a highly ineffective negotiation that doubled the billable hours fees, and it was just very painful to not be able to do anything about it. And I think there's a real opportunity for technology like that, and maybe I'll become a customer sometime in the future too. But thank you, gentlemen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your story, and thank you to all our other presenters for all the great work you're doing, advancing legal innovation. Thank you to our participants for all your great questions. And yeah, please stay tuned for next week's meeting. We'll send out an announcement early next week. Thank you all. We're a little bit over our time, so we'll have to close here. But I look forward to seeing you all again in the near future.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.